Hello and welcome. It's so lovely to have you here. Today we will be making this, which my husband referred to as being comically large. Hopefully you got a laugh out of that. But you can make it however you want. That's my biggest one. So you can make it any size you want. In fact, because these are so custom, you can make it any shape you want. You can put any siding, framing you want on it, and you can make that any color you want. Totally customizable. You don't even have to have cork backing. You can't call it a corkboard at that point, but you don't even have to have cork. You could do paper, fabric, tinsel, bubble wrap, whatever you can think of that you can poke a pin through, you could do that. Right here, whatever fits your desires. Totally customizable, guys. Customizable corkboard. Unless you don't use cork, then it's like a bulletin board or something. A pin stabby board. As for the equipment you'll need for this project, it's somewhere between scissors and a glue gun, and a miter saw and a router. And I say that because all the tutorials I looked up were either like, alright, you're gonna take this frame, you're gonna take this corkboard, cut it to the size of your frame, and hot glue it in. Or they were like, heavy duty, we're making a full-on frame, and you're gonna cut it with this miter saw and route it out. And so this is the tutorial for those people who want it more customized than gluing a corkboard into a frame, but do not have the equipment levels of like an almost full-on wood shop. This is for you. And depending on what materials you use, that will change what equipment you'll need. And you can choose what materials. We'll talk about what you'll need. We'll get right into talking about the materials right now.
All right, to start off, you want to grab yourself a pin and go wherever you go for materials. In this case, out to the hardware store. Once you're there, you're going to start stabbing stuff, as you can see. If the pin goes in easily and the material holds it steady, then it will technically work as your pin board. But you still need to decide if that's a material you want to work with. You can do anything like ceiling tiles, drywall, foam tiles, poster board, etc. Personally, I went with this material right here. It is a soundboard. It was pretty cheap while also being big, sturdy, and not too messy. Next, you need something to frame the board. This can be whatever you desire. You can go outside, pick up sticks, and call it good. However, I decided to go with some molding. This molding to be exact. They have lots of options at hardware stores. Pick what your vibe is. The last material we need is something to cover the board. If you want to be basic, you can go with cork like me. If you are going for cork, I do recommend this one from Hobby Lobby. If you want more flair than cork, go with any thin stabbable material, preferably one that doesn't get holes from being stabbed. The last piece to this project is whatever you want to use to hold all this stuff together. I went with wood glue since all the stuff I'm using is pretty woody, but I wouldn't recommend it for fabric or poster board. You probably want like a spray adhesive for that. But depending on what you're using, you may also want screws or nails. So you just gotta pick what glue or other fastener you need for your specific materials. Now to shape and assemble the pieces! Now, I'm not sure you know this or not, but this DIY is completely customizable. You can do whatever shape you want, as long as it has straight lines and you can figure out how to do a little trick. I'm doing a hexagon, so I'm going to start by drawing it out. To find the 120 degree angles I need, I'm going to use a 60 degree mark on my quilter's ruler. Of course, you can use whatever measuring tool you like. For the hexagon, as you can already see, I drew two parallel lines across from each other. In this case, they were 18 inches apart. You just got to make sure the bottoms of the lines line up with each other. Then, from the bottom, draw a straight line 120 degrees from your parallel lines, and this will create the bottom when you do it to both sides. Once the bottom ones are drawn, measure them, and if they are the same length, you did it right! Congratulations! Now make your original parallel lines the same length as the bottom ones, and draw the top ones like you did the bottom ones. And da-da-da! You have a perfect hexagon! As you can see, I decided to go with hexagons. I really like how they tessellate, so they look good in a group, and I wanted to make multiple ones for different uses, but of course, you can do some fancier shape, like a polygon animal head or something else super cool. You just have to think about what you love and see how you can make it work. Next up is cutting. I will be using a jigsaw, but depending on what material you're using, you can use something as simple as a steak knife. Like with the foam, steak knife would go right through it. But for this, I'm using the jigsaw. And once upon a time, I would saw by following the line, but I never ended up with a straight line. So this time, I got a nice, thick, straight edge, and I used it to guide my saw. It was beautifully easy. I can't believe I ever did anything else. So clamping it down is best, but you can also see here that I used pins to hold it in place and then held my hand over it so they didn't get knocked out. And this was just easier than clamping, but you are more likely to mess up like you see me doing a couple times here. I think now would be a great time to share our feelings. I'll go first. So, I was never a huge corkboard enthusiast. In fact, there was a time when I would make fun of them. I'm not proud of it. I thought the primary colored plastic pins were so uncool, and I wasn't into the whole putting holes into papers to display them. I was also a little bit anti the pins because I feared them falling off and me stepping on them. I'd also seen some serious corkboard decay in the past from too much stabbing, and with all that, I ended up being Team Magnet. I saw them as being more technologically advanced and therefore better. So, what changed my mind? Why am I making a corkboard? Recently, I've been wanting a board for planning and not displaying like I used my magnet board for in the past. And there's something about, it happened, the thing we've all been waiting for, I cut the table! So we're just gonna go ahead and fill this in with some nice wood fill. Might take a couple layers, might take some drying. All good, right? Now we're gonna sand that off, clean it up a little bit, take a wet rag, clean off any of that dust. Make sure the husband never finds out. We gotta do this fast. Alright, we're gonna write it a little note. As my father always said, never say sorry, otherwise you're at fault. So we're gonna, sorry, too bad that thing happened to you. And we're gonna give it to him, gonna help it feel better. And it's at this time that I remind myself that all I have to do is have 7 kids. Then the table will be too small for a family and we'll have to get a new one. So now I'm planning on having 7 kids. Alright, now that he has his note, it's all good there. Time to fill it in with some stain. Any color is better than nothing. Then I filmed opening this polyurethane because it took like 90 billion years. Enjoy it in like 1,000 times speed. Alright, now that our polyurethane is open, we're just going to give this guy a nice thick coat, cover it back up, make sure to get all the parts we sanded to. And look at that, good as new. Husband will never ever know. With all those fillings out of the way, let's talk the frame. So what you're going to do is put it down the way you want it and then flip it over. Then you're going to mark the edges on your piece of framing. And if you're doing a hexagon, you're actually able to take your straight edge, put it up against the hexagon, and then draw the line it makes across your frame piece. Unfortunately, this technique will not work for other shapes. If you're doing another shape, you're going to have to measure the angle, half that number, then put that degree on your frame. And always make sure you're going inwards. That's one mistake I made and it messes everything up. So the dot you put is the most out part and then you're gonna draw the line inwards. However, if you do have something that can cut a perfect angle, you won't have to be doing this whole line thing. I'm just doing it because I'm working with a jigsaw. And as you can see here, you're just gonna cut it with the jigsaw as straight as you can get and make sure to cut on the outside of the line so you're not cutting off too much. And so with how we drew the lines, I just wanted to explain real fast why it works on hexagons but not other shapes. You may already know this. Anyway, so a hexagon's angles are 120 degrees, which you half that's 60 degrees. 120 plus 60 is 180, which is the angle of a completely straight line. So when you line up that straight line with the 120 degree angle of the hexagon, that gives you your 60 degree angle, making it work. And I know that may sound like some crazy conspiracy theory if you don't remember how trig works, but I promise that's math. Alright, and before we move on to securing our frame to our board, you're going to want to make sure all of them fit. Right now I'm taking a saw to it because it wasn't fitting quite right. I made a little bulge in it. This ended up being a huge failure, but it's okay because we're going to fill everything with wood fill in the end, and it's all going to be alright. But yeah, you just want to make sure it works. I would suggest sanding it off if you have just a tidge bit of problems. But if you have too much empty space, that's fine. We're just going to fill it in. Now that we're sure our frames are going to be a-okay, it's time to cork this baby! Or whatever other material you decided on. So the first 3 I made, I tried to attach it with an adhesive spray like all the tutorials I saw said, but it was not holding well, and that stuff is expensive, so I decided just to go with wood glue. You're definitely going to want to get the edges really well with the glue, and then just try to fill in whatever space you can. And I'm sure there's a much better way to spread it around than finger painting. However, you do get the reward of peeling it off your fingers afterwards. So, alright, and once you're done gluing it, slap that bad boy down. And you're going to put as much pressure as you can on everywhere. And once you think you put a pressure everywhere, just let it sit and dry for a bit. Once it's dry, you're going to go in with some sort of sharp object and cut the cork off. I was using an X-Acto knife. It was a tidge bit dull, so I did get some spots where it kind of ripped the cork a little bit. I would recommend, if you're not going to do a frame, that you cut it with scissors to get the most perfect edge possible. But seeing that I'm covering it with a frame, it's really no big deal if a chunk is missing here or there. And now to put our frame on. And this is why I wanted that sturdy back, because I'm not making an actual frame to support the thing inside. The thing is supporting the frame in this case. And I found what's best is just to do 2 strips of wood glue. In this case I did 4, and that was too much. So do 3, and you can see me wiping it off right here onto another piece. So do 2 strips of glue, and you just push it down, rub it in a little bit to make sure it moves over the entire piece, and you're good. You just have to sit and let it wait to dry, and you got yourself a beautifully framed corkboard. Now that the frame has dried onto the cork, I'm gonna go in with my wood fill and finish things out and just smooth it all out so there's no spaces left. And it's gonna look totally fine by the end. Even this big old gash that I made, it'll look fine. No one can tell unless they go in super close. And to finish these cork boards up, we're just going to paint over those places where we filled it in with wood fill. I recommend being very careful with this so you don't get paint on your cork board like I did a couple times. If you want to be super sure, you can lay down some painter's tape right in that corner so it doesn't get any paint on your board. For the sides, I'm just going to paint them gray to have it blend in with everything. You could put an actual edging on here to make it really finished, but I'm too lazy for that, and I also don't want to spend more money. So I'm just painting them gray, and I think it looks nice in the end. Once I was done painting it, I decided I didn't really like the super flat gray. It was hard to see the design in the frame, so I went back around with some black wash, and it's really easy to make. You just mix a little bit of black paint with quite a bit of water, and you got your black wash, and you just slap it on however you like, whatever you think looks best. You might want to research it more. I've never done it before. I've never researched it. I'm sure there's better ways than what I did. And when mine was too thick, I just dipped my brush in water and thinned it out more once it was on the frame. And I like it a lot better that way. It's a lot easier to see the beautiful details in that frame. It's time to hang this bad boy up. You can choose how you want to do it. Personally, I just drilled right through it and then put a finishing nail in and hammered it into the wall. But of course, there's more official ways to do it, and you can just go to a section in your hardware store and look at the different options. This was just the cheapest and easiest way to do it, so that's what I did. In total, this project was $25 for the molding, $1 for the nails, $3 for the glue, $15 for the soundboard, and $11 for the cork. That totals to about $60, and between the 4 corkboards I made, that's $15 a corkboard, which is not too bad at all, and I think they turned out pretty dang well. I am super happy with this project. I can't wait to use them in all my future planning. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.